everybody. Welcome back to the GYST Method Show. My name is Nicole Gerard, and today I am joined by special guest, former client, current friend, Jess Birken from Birken Law in Minnesota. Jess, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is super fun to the official capacity video chat.
I know, right? It's crazy. You and I have spoken so many times via video, but this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because you and I have such great conversations and you are doing some incredible things in your industry, which is obviously law, given that you're a lawyer, and in the nonprofit space, which is where you specialize. So I'm so glad you agreed to come on and have a chat. I think what we chat about will be important.
Well, I hope so.
I know so. So for those that are unaware, brief introduction for you. You do have your own law firm now. Why don't you give everyone just a brief background of who you are, what you do, and who you serve?
Yeah, so, I'm a lawyer. I work out of my own office, which you see behind me here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'm only a plane ride away from my friend Nick, but it's a customs involved plane ride, so it's tough. We have a really big nonprofit community here in Minnesota. So there are actually quite a few lawyers in the city where I live in the Twin Cities here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, that work with nonprofits. And I am one of them. So I work with primarily small, scrappy nonprofits or nonprofits that might be big, but have sort of a entrepreneurial, tactical mindset.
I love that. And now just to refresh my memory and help others out, you actually came from a more traditional sort of corporate law environment, if I'm not mistaken, before you opened your own firm, maybe still a nonprofit, but before you went out on your own, what was your life like then?
Yeah, so after law school, I worked for a judge. So I was in a very traditional, trial court, doing all the very traditional lawyerly things, wearing a suit every day. And then I worked inside a large national nonprofit for about 5 years. And, that was not a traditional lawyer experience, but a more conservative office environment for sure.
Interesting. So one of the primary reasons I wanted to have you on the show is for our audience, we talk a lot about getting yourself together, getting your stuff together. And for those that know us well, it's get your shit together. And one thing I've noticed with you, especially over the years, is that you've had these moments where you've recognized that there was a good opportunity for change or a need for change, and you took action. And what I want to try and sort of discuss right now is, what was that moment like for you? The first one being leaving another practice to go out on your own. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I was partnered with another lawyer. After I left my in-house job at the big nonprofit, I was partnered with another lawyer. And basically, I ended up leaving because it was really just not a good fit. We both had very different styles. She was a sort of aggressive litigator style, and I'm sort of more of I would like to create a win-win, make problems smaller. I don't ever want to go to court. And also, I'm a mom, I have 2 kids. So, work-life integration is super important to me. I didn't want to spend my entire, world working. And so when you're in a partnership where revenues are, there's 2 of you, right? Sure. So it's like, if you're bringing in this much money and you're bringing in that much money, that can get weird. And really, I was the CEO and managing partner, but I still had to get a lot of her buy-in on making technological changes, like moving to a cloud-based business model. And that just got old after a while. So I wanted to make my own decisions and work as much or as little as I wanted to. And so we broke up.
Yeah, you had a professional breakup.
Yep.
And that's okay. I think actually that is something that we speak about quite a bit here, is that moment when you come to the realization that things just aren't right, it's not working. Yeah. It's okay to address it and do something about it. And a lot of people will drag it on for years and years, and everyone becomes really unhappy. So how did that situation actually come about? Like, where did you come to the, okay, we need to have a professional, let's stay friends afterwards type of breakup? Like, did you wait a long period of time before doing that, or is it pretty quick?
Well, I would say it took me a really long time to realize that it was a
Mm,
bad fit.
okay.
But once I realized that this was just like this was never going to work.
Yeah.
Once that sort of like clarity hit me, I was like, okay, I need to exit from this. And essentially, like I'm a big Gretchen Rubin's for personality types. I'm an obliger, right? So
Mm-hmm,
my life
mm-hmm.
is like filled with like coaches and trainers and like all of these people like you and, whatever,
Yeah.
therapists and personal trainers, because I rely on that external, source to keep me going. So I used, my coach, my attorneys to sort of help me through that decision or through
Mm-hmm,
taking that action. And in my head, I had pictured it as like, this is going to last for months and be sort of like a long, painful process. And it was quickly pointed out to me that like, no, today's Wednesday, Friday's your last day. This is how you handle it. And I was like, oh, so having those people around me that helped me accelerate that transition, I think was
mm-hmm.
really key.
That's a really interesting point. And I think that sometimes when we don't have that, tell me if you felt this way, that that fear is going to hold us back from making that decision.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Because you actually do want it to be over, and I think this is true with a lot of things, like the anticipation of the thing happening is actually worse than the thing happening. And once,
Yes.
we've all had that situation where you're like, oh, once it's finally done and over with, you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. And you've
Exactly.
actually spent so much more time agonizing about it than you ever
Yes.
really needed to.
Yes, absolutely. And you're 100% right. The times where things end up worse than you anticipated are so few, but you're right. We will torture ourselves with a decision that we have to make and prolong that as long as possible, which is funny because you're just prolonging your own torture.
Right?
It's
Totally.
wild.
So
Now,
true.
you said something super interesting just a moment ago about sort of that resistance to change and implementing technology in the business. And one thing that you are doing right now in the industry that you're in is you're starting some really big and important conversations about the introduction of automation, the introduction of technology, and how to leverage it so that you yourself and your team, because you have a team now, can do their job properly. Walk me through how you got to that point and what it is you're doing now to make that conversation a bit louder in the community.
Ooh, that's a big one. Okay.
It's a good question.
How did I get to that point? I mean, I have always kind of been a little nerdy, I guess. And
Sure.
I've always had a lot of geeky friends around me. So I have a lot of like um
You mean tech savvy?
yeah,
Like,
tech savvy, like
yeah.
IT administrators and like coders and gamers. And so like I've always like Palm Olive, like I've been soaking in that
Yeah.
through my social community because I'm connected to a lot of like creatives and like tech people and like so I've been exposed to a lot of technology. And I always have friends that are like, oh, look at this cool thing, or oh, look at that cool thing. So it seemed very normal to me to just start implementing things at work
Hmm.
that would make things more efficient, run better, um, give me more freedom to work from home, all of those sorts of things, right?
Hmm.
And then what was the other part of the
Well,
question? It was like, how am I
it's
doing that on an industry wide?
yeah, because I have noticed that, of course, we've known each other for a number of years and I follow you on all the socials. And I do see a lot of the conversations that are happening. And from what I see from the outside looking in, not our private conversations, you seem to have two types of followers. It's the traditional, this is how we've always done business. I don't know if we can do that crowd. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's the other crowd that says, wow, I didn't even think of doing that. That's amazing. How are you doing it? And they get super interested and want to know more. So, how are you finding it from your side, on both sides, those that resist and those that really want to adopt it but just don't know how?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I often think of myself as like this, I'm like a bridge or something.
Okay.
Because there is like this world of people that are really, 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 really into the tech. And
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about like AI and the blockchain and, like machine learning. And you talk to them and you're just like, what are you
Yeah.
even saying? Like, you're so smart and deep in the weeds on this. And then you do have the sort of like, I print out all my emails and I have my secretary
Highlight.
take dictation, and like I don't know how the internet works, lawyers, right? And
Right.
somehow like I feel like I'm in the middle,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, every time I teach, I'm like, hey, I'm not super special. I don't know how to code a SQL server. I'm not an IT whiz. I don't know how to do JavaScript. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a regular person that is interested and curious and like tries things.
Beautiful.
So I think that from my perspective, it's like I'm in a way trying to connect those two groups and be like, it's not like you're either over here or you're over here. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can try something and like make your law practice work better for you or make your business work for you, and enjoy your work more through using technology. And I think that's kind of my approach, I guess.
Which is a pretty healthy one, especially when it comes to change. Do you find that you have a significant amount of pushback with the ones that maybe aren't so much like pen and paper highlighting dictation, but closer to like, where is it you're finding the most resistance in the industry to actually moving things forward?
Um, so there's this whole thing that I now refer to as productivity porn,
Okay, tell me
where
more.
so I give a lot of talks, like a lot of continuing ed talks.
Mm-hmm,
And for me, the audience is lawyers,
mm-hmm.
but this could be like for any business industry, I'm sure. Um, and I feel like people come to the talks and they are interested and they have like an idea that they want to know what's new and they want to learn about what's new, but it's like a work fantasy and I don't see people executing. It's like
Yeah.
people furiously scribble down the little like tools, but then I feel
Mm-hmm,
like they leave and they don't do anything with them. And so that's where I feel like the friction is. It's
mm-hmm.
like, how do we get people over the psychological hurdle, the limiting script? Like, what happens when they leave? They're all
Yeah.
excited, they're there to learn, they're interested, but then they go back to their office and they like don't try the online calendaring thing. It's like, what
Do you think
happened
that's
there?
individual or do you think maybe that's environmental, like the organization they're going back to and sort of the norms that exist there? Or a balance of both, maybe?
I think it's both.
Mm.
I think for lawyers in particular, they're I mean, every industry or profession has like a culture,
Mm-hmm.
right? So marketing has a culture, doctors have a culture, like auto guys have a culture. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a relationship with a performance engine guy, so like I'm getting exposed to that whole culture. Like, every industry has like its no social norms and
Mm-hmm.
mores and like cultural things. And for lawyers, it's very like, this is tradition is very important, the way we've always done it, and also being risk averse and also being perfect overachiever, so there's like
Type
this
A.
type A,
Yeah.
don't want to make a mistake, don't want to seem foolish, don't want to take a risk. Those are sort of embedded in the culture of being an attorney. And so
Mm-hmm.
I am like definitely poking at that
And how are you
in a
finding
way.
that going so far?
It's interesting. I mean, like, people, you put stuff out there and the people who are drawn to it will be drawn to it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like it makes me think of Seth Godin, right? Like, thanks
Yeah.
for interacting with the work. It wasn't for you. That's
Yeah.
fine. Like, if it's
Yep.
not for you, then just keep printing out your emails and having your
True.
secretary write them for you.
Dictate
I
for
don't
you.
know.
So now that you've actually opened up your practice, now that you're on the other side of leaving sort of a more traditional environment and you're doing all of these cool things. And when I say cool things, I mean, you're offering courses, you're doing talks, you've got a book, an ebook. Like you're doing things that not a lot of people in your industry have done up until now. I mean, I'm sure there's a sprinkling, but for sure in your area and for where we are, you're doing a lot of really great things. Now that you're doing them, because I know, just not to put anything on blast, but a few years ago when we were first talking, you were like, I don't know if we could do this. And we had the conversation. I said,
Oh yeah,
of course you can. So now that you are where you are now, how do you feel? And do you have the feeling that the next time you start to get stuck or have that GYST moment again, that you could get past it even faster?
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you were there for the whole like developing the online course business, which
True.
really in a way was a great learning experience. It wasn't a financial success for the business. I've sort of leveraged it into something that works now. And I think that
It's perfect.
I learned a lot from doing that. And one of the things that I learned from that is that like there's this big messy middle anytime you start anything. And so thinking that, oh, like this will just be really quick, or this will be like an easy fix, or like I can do this all in one shot, is just like a toxic mindset that you have to let go of. And this idea that like, draw the effing owl like meme comes to mind, right? Like that's the thing that comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Is the first time you draw an owl, it's a couple of circles and like a triangle for the beak, and you're not making like a Rembrandt quality owl portrait.
Of course.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think just working with you and going from like, I don't know if I can even like delegate my email inbox to, I have all these complicated email automations that like run themselves in the background, has been just like crazy.
Good.
Super crazy.
Good. So then if I were to say to you, if you were to take a look at your practice and your team right now, and then 18 months from now, you'll be even further and have integrated even more tech and made an even bigger difference, does that idea scare you or does it excite you?
Yeah, it's exciting. The problem that I always have, and I think this is because of like coming of age in the middle of the recession happening, it's like I'm very much not a long range planner anymore, because the whole idea that like you can have a 5-year plan and execute on it really just was like, that doesn't exist. So people always want to be like, so what's the next thing? And I'm like, I don't know.
I'll let you know when I find it.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And I'm sure we will be. Absolutely. But what that looks like, I don't know. I'll tell you when I get there. But my like mental state is constant growth. So I can't help but go that direction.
Yeah. But you're doing it in a systematic and responsible way. Not to pull in too much of the current news, but we're seeing a lot of really large multinationals file for bankruptcy. We're seeing a lot of organizations shut down, mostly because they went too big, too fast, too far. And just anyone listening or watching, Jess and I are the exact same age. So I too grew up, like we're, I think 8 days apart or something crazy.
Yep.
I grew up during that same time. And it's something that I try to echo again and again and again with our clients and our audience. You have to base your decisions on reality and what's happening now. And you really can only go so far before you're just speculating, which puts your business at risk. So I think that's really smart, especially with what you're doing to sort of update and innovate the technology and automation in a law practice. Because so many new things come up that you may outgrow what you currently have, and there's a new, better solution. Maybe Clio down the road isn't the right thing anymore. Like, right? It depends on what's going on. So I think that's really smart. The last question that I wanted to ask you, and I did send this to Jess beforehand, the journey that you've gone through so far, and I know the word journey is so overused at the moment. So I apologize. But the growth that you've had, that's a better way of putting it. The growth that you've had so far, just in the last few years, like you've grown and done so much, which I'm wagering you didn't think you would have done at the time. But now that you're here, totally normal, feels good, feels great. Do you find that you are a little more resilient when it comes to those tough times and drawing the owl the first time versus having it done perfectly at the end? Like, do you feel resilient when you're faced with these changes and challenges? How so?
Man, there is nothing that will develop some grit in you than than falling flat on your face a few times.
Being an entrepreneur, owning your own business.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I would say like, if grit has a score, like I'm way up there. I am, yeah, definitely. There, I've, like, there are just so many things that go wrong, or, you try a piece of software. I tried a project management software, and after 6 months, I was like, this is trash and doesn't work for me, and you scrap it. Designing a product and then realizing it's really hard to find a person who's thinking about starting a nonprofit. How do you market to those folks? That was a really great lesson, right? So all of these things have been teaching me to like pick myself up by my bootstraps and like the American dream, whatever. I've gotten very comfortable with trying and failing and saying, okay, that didn't work, or that broke, or let's do that again, or version 1 was pretty good, but gee, I can see where it could be improved a lot. And that means changing something that we've already invested time and energy into, but going this next level will take it to the, like, amplify it, make it better, serve our customers better, whatever it is. And so just developing that willingness to do that, definitely.
That's fantastic. And I think it's especially powerful coming from someone in a leadership position. I mean, you do own your firm, you do have a team. And when the head of that team exhibits or creates the culture that it's okay to try and it's okay to make a mistake and it's okay to learn, I think that's incredibly important. And I know that you've amassed a really cool working team around you, and I have to guess that they're starting to adopt some of those traits as well, just by being around you, trying, failing, starting again. That's fantastic. And I think it's good advice for a lot of leaders. In fact, before we close this out, if you were speaking to a fellow colleague that is where you were about 4 years ago, what would you say to them?
All right, I would say give yourself permission to make mistakes. And I think, to your point, once you give yourself permission to make mistakes, it shows other people around you that it's okay to make mistakes. Making mistakes is the single biggest thing you learn from in life, in business. Little kids make mistakes all the time, and that's how they grow, right? And so at some point, the belief that you've got to have it all figured out, you've got to know what you're doing, you've got to appear competent in front of everyone, it almost chokes you. And so being able to give yourself permission to make mistakes, fall down, pick yourself up and start over is one of the biggest things you can do for yourself.
I love that. Thank you. So I do plan on having Jess back again because she's wonderful. And I know probably 6 months from now, she'll have created or taught something else incredible that's changing her industry. But until then, Jess, I will have all of your information in the description box below. But where can people find you?
People can find me on Twitter at Jess Birken. You can also go to my website at hackyourpractice.lawyer.
Excellent.
And if you're interested in adapting some of the tools or learning from me about any of the tactics, you can opt into my email list right there on that page. And I will send you a great little ebook about 5 rules that will improve your life and your work.
Love that. Excellent. So I'll make sure I have everything below. In the meantime, Jess, you're welcome back anytime. I will have you back again, but thank you so much for being here and chatting with me
Thanks
today.
for having me. Super fun.
Good stuff. We'll talk to you again soon.